Hi, and welcome to...
Oh, we're already on?
Yeah, we've been on. I didn't know why that you were...
Tell me.
Why would I sit down?
Okay.
We're on!
Hello. What are we talking today, Jordyn?
Today we are talking about complacency in relationships and the slow death that happens when your compromise turns into a sacrifice.
Oh, that's well said. I couldn't have worded better.
Check! It's an accomplishment.
Relationship, so beautiful, but at the same time, such a puzzle to navigate sometimes. Yeah, we've been together for how long now?
2 years and 1 month.
Not yet.
Yes, October 1st.
October 1st, you're right. 2 years and a month. 2 years and a month plus. And how's it been for you on your side? Is it the best relationship ever? You're on camera, by the way.
Actually, yeah, it's been really good.
Better than your exes?
Yes.
Everything?
No.
Tell me about it.
So, what I really appreciate about this relationship is growth and safety, which is a really interesting combination to have. To have the challenge to not be complacent, but feeling safe within that as well. And I think that's
in
growth.
Safe in growth.
And when I say growth, I don't just mean the easy growth, because of course there's times where you can grow and it's like you feel safe because of course it's easy, you're growing in the terms of joy, but I'm talking about the growth in terms of the hard looks at yourself where you're like, I have to break this pattern, I have to step up, I have to take responsibility, the unfun parts. And that's the hardest place to feel safe. And I think that's a really beautiful thing you've offered me in this relationship is not just a green card to do whatever I want, not just a green card to like, oh, you know, whatever, you're you, I'll adapt myself off of you, but the ability to feel safe and also take responsibility.
Can you just clarify what would it mean on the opposite to not feel safe in the field that you're talking with?
Yeah, to not feel safe would look like an ultimatum in terms of like you feel the person's on the edge about to leave, you feel the person not really supporting you, you feel the pressure where it's like I want you to do better, and you don't feel this unconditional, you feel this like it's a demand, not a request. And of course I think you can request it, and eventually if it's not fulfilled it may turn into a demand.
Is it somehow correlated to codependency? So not safe, meaning that your partner is codependent on you?
I think it can also depend, not safe could be from codependency, but it could also come from a complete lack of ability to weave. Teal Swan says this really amazing thing that, what was the definition? I think it was the definition of to love someone is to take them as a part of yourself, because you can't hurt them without also hurting you. And so, if you don't have that, if you don't have that, I think that can also be you don't have that feeling of safety. And so this is what I mean by like codependency. I think with codependency, you have that safety, but you don't have that challenge to grow as much. Like you said, the one thing you really appreciate about this relationship is our what was the word you said? Commitment to like not just get stagnant.
There's an averse reaction to settling for lower than we're men. And in
settling.
Settling is okay. Like we don't have to be always on the move, but it's about the feeling of growth, of expansion, of realization, of connecting with community. It's really easy to, at least in my past with other relationship, to settle in a comfort bubble where you are not challenged in your relationship. And I'm not talking about being challenged emotionally, but just to settle for not challenging the ego. And in a relationship, although that it's challenging emotionally, we have a lot of up and down in the previous phase of our relationship. We have always been focused in the aspect of not allowing our relationship to stand in the way of our personal journey. So it's important that the sense of self exists, but the sense of union, of togetherness also is strong, and to not lose one at the detriment of the other.
Yeah. When we were talking earlier, it came to mind, we were using my parents' relationship as an example, and I saw really clearly just the compromises. Like someone doesn't have the ability to give you this yet, or you would like them to do better in this area. And in a relationship, like you said this morning, the concept of just love all of me, and how that can kind of like take away your responsibility to like be active in the relationship and your growth. But there's a time where there's also tolerance within a relationship. You're merging with another human being who has their own strengths and weaknesses and their own pace of growth. And I think it's really important to give people the time and space of like tolerance, like to love them unconditionally. But there's also a time where that compromise starts to turn into like a sacrifice. And we're
some people are watching that.
Yeah, so we're just famous. But there's a time where that compromise starts to hit the border limit of draining, of where resentment starts to come in, and it's no longer a compromise, it's more of a sacrifice. And to be able to acknowledge that so you don't build up resentment.
For me, the difference between compromise and sacrifice, even if it's confusing for others, I feel it cannot be mistaken. Compromise is for me when you have to get rid of ego layers to be more complete with yourself, either with someone or with a different life path. It's like you could be a CEO of a big company, but you feel within yourself that you want to start traveling, or that you want to be with someone, but that person live in a different country. Then you're able to say, okay, I'm gonna just reframe my company, or sell my part of the company, or just close my company or move from the place I love, but to be with somebody that I feel that it's the next phase of my life. So the desire of being self is going away from what you were, and going away is you have to let go of the past to renew yourself. But it's not about doing or being with someone. It's like sacrifice, on the other hand, is to add ego layers to satisfy the ego. And this can be like, oh, I love this person, but my path, my journey would be to travel. And there's like, oh, but this person's beautiful, this person fulfill your ego in a way that you feel comfortable, or you feel proud, or something that is superficial but doesn't really resonate to the core of your being. Then crushing your inner voice to be with something that please the ego, then for me this is a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is just a matter of time before you feel more compressed in your identity, that you feel more claustrophobic, like unfree. It's the slow loss of freedom of being yourself, and that's a sacrifice, and that's just a ticking bomb for an implosion of yourself. And that's why there's people in long-term relationship, even married, having kids, in a settled life, that eventually give up everything and start traveling, or just go on a wild ride, because they were sacrificing so much to have success, to build a family, or to have a life that was conditioned to them as being perfect. So sacrifice is unhealthy. Sacrifice, it's it's unhealthy for the soul. It's unhealthy. So it's not about what we get rid of. It's about how does it feel within ourselves. Does the action I'm taking bring me more joy and freedom, or it's taking away my joy and freedom? To stay with that person, to go somewhere, it doesn't matter the action. It's about how we feel on the inside. And sacrifice, it doesn't feel good on the inside. It's just like, okay, I'm buying peace for now, and then therefore it's easier to handle my partner, or and then I'm shutting off my desire or my complaint, and it doesn't feel good inside, but it creates peace in the moment with my partner, and that's a sacrifice.
I hear you, and I love your definition, but I feel like in practical application, it can be so confusing. At least for myself, there's times where it can, like they say, the ego is really confusing. Like it can be really hard to differentiate. Of course, sometimes it's clear and sometimes it's easy, but there's times that it's not so clear, and there's a lot of times that actually I have gained benefit where I thought it was maybe more of a sacrifice, but then I realized, oh, it was just a sacrifice for my ego, not a sacrifice for my soul, and it did maintain the peace, and it did actually bring me more growth and more joy. So I don't know. I'm saying it can feel confusing to be able to tell the difference, and it's not always comfortable to make compromises either. Even
I never say it was comfortable.
Right, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to see the difference. Maybe as you get to know yourself more, it becomes easier, but in my experience, it can feel challenging to differentiate.
I agree, and I feel that it becomes, like you said, easier with time, or with listening to our intuition, which is what I believe is what distinguishes between sacrifice and compromise. The intuition is, for me, the inner voice we all have within ourselves. It's a really subtle voice, and to have ease of being able to perceive it and to acknowledge it, it's to lower the loud voice of the monkey mind. And if you have a really strong monkey mind, one like I had a lot more before, then it's a lot harder to acknowledge and hear the voice of the intuition. The intuition is always there for me, but it's more subtle at a lower frequency, or maybe a higher frequency, whatever. But the mind easily overwhelm the voice of the intuition. So if we allow ourselves to be always busy in our mind, or in physical reality, then even if the intuition is there, we just have a doubt, and then we just keep going our programming, and we just dodge and ignore the voice and the intuition. And that's why something like COVID, where many people have paused their life for a longer extended amount of time for the first time in their life, or just before even COVID, that people were taking long vacation. They just need a break after university. They just need a break. They take a couple month vacation. The moment we not deprogram, but the moment that we stay away from the pattern of a daily routine for long enough, then there's the void that we fill in our mind usually gives us insight into, like, oh, that life doesn't make sense anymore. When we're caught up in it, consuming and hanging out with friends at the restaurant and going out, it's like, it feels okay because we don't know anything better. But when we pause away from that for long enough, then there's this intuition, this feeling, this deep feelings, like, I don't want to go back to that. And then it's easy to doubt that feeling and then go back to it, but it won't feel easier when we get back. You have to numb your suffering to be able to stay in that environment that doesn't feel right to you. And numbing your suffering, it could be with drugs, but there's so many other ways to numb your suffering. Social media, drugs, work, sex, pleasure, seeking pleasure. All of this is just a way for us to to allow the ego or to allow ourselves to be okay with the skin doesn't feel right to us. You have to numb yourself. But when we step aside from it, usually from just a stepping aside from a daily routine that doesn't fit us, that doesn't feel right to us, then it's possible to even if we don't know what we want, what would be better, we know what we don't want. And I think this is the first key into entering the path of being yourself. And being yourself, learning how to be yourself as an individual, help us to learn how to be yourself in a relationship, no matter if it's a romantic relationship or any other kind of relationship. If not, we're just playing a tape, a conditioning, a pattern that we're being told to play out. Being authentic is our own responsibility. If not, we're playing a role, and that we know or we don't know. Like sometimes I know I'm playing a role, and it's okay to play a character as long as you know. The problem is that when we think we're forced to play a character we don't want to play, and we think there's no other choice for us to behave differently than the role that we are playing, and that creates suffering. I can go back home tomorrow in Canada and it was like, okay, I want a bit more money, I work hard for a summer or what, and then I get out of that matrix, and then I can just hang out and chill. And it's not about working visit not working, it's to feel right in what we're doing. Either it's about work, either it's about relationship, interacting in the community. There's a moment where it feels right, I feel I belong there, and there's a moment that it doesn't feel right. And then there's a moment to like, okay, what's next for me? And to take the action that are available to us to take a different trajectory in our life towards something that feels more right to us. The feeling is there. We might not know, understand, but it's like, this, what I have, is not what feels right to me. It might be what it feels right in the past, and it's okay. But now, and the feeling doesn't feel right, that skin, it's time to shed it and to like reinvent yourself a new identity.
What comes to mind when you share that, and merging this with what we talked about with relationships, because the relationships are always, it's you in the relationship, right? So it's like you can't just take the you out. So it's like your own way of living affects the relationship. And I'm thinking about this really beautiful quote from Jeff Foster. I don't remember it fully, but I can tell you the essence of it. And if you really want, you could look it up. But it's talking about how the difficult questions are the most important to ask. And I get the vision of like, when COVID happens, or, when we get this, like, for instance, an injury and you get pulled out of your normal life for long enough,
Tell me about it.
You're confronted with either the emptiness inside of you, or you're confronted with something that doesn't feel right, or confronted with just difficult emotions and questions. I'll let this go by. And it's those difficult questions that get us in touch with those painful places and show us kind of the other pathway. But it's not always, like, when you're in it, it's not just this, oh, this doesn't feel right, I'm gonna go travel the world. Sometimes you just don't know the answer, and it's just asking those difficult questions, which are so important. And within a relationship, to also welcome a space of being able to talk about difficult questions, and also having a space that you're cultivating where you have a safe space to talk about those difficult questions, where it's not just let's talk about it and it's in a blame, or it's you're not doing this enough, or this build up that you just vomit out that I'm unhappy. It's actually taking the time just to go, okay, let's ask this difficult question and sit in it and be uncomfortable and see what arises from that.
It's definitely really important to be able to have an open conversation and to have the flexibility of navigating life and all the direction it brings us.
There's a way to get both needs met, and the needs we're talking about are like the needs of the soul, because you said satisfaction this time, and those are not the words that you use with me, and I think that speaks volumes to the bigger perspective that we're looking at of nourishing your true soul, not just satisfying or getting that quick hit of like satisfaction, but like the genuine needs of both people's souls, hearts. Yeah.
We are here to grow. It's beautiful when we can do a part of the path with someone that that we feel magical. It's probably even more amazing to have this journey with one person along our life. But it's a lot worse to hope that this person is the one and it's not the one, and that person doesn't end up to be the one. Sometimes there is room for togetherness to grow, but because we want that togetherness to remain the way it was when we started, and
With that magic.
yeah, and that magic, then it doesn't take long to lose that magic when we want to keep everything equal, but doesn't allow things to grow if they're meant to grow. It's like a plant, stopping a plant to become a tree because we want it to remain a little bonsai. It's like you have to put it in a plant and trim it. It's okay. There's people who have lower potential or smaller potential, and if it feels right to them, then there's plants who are meant to just stay small the rest of their life. But there's seeds which are meant to become giant sequoia, and to stop the potential of someone or ourselves in the name of love or ego love, I feel that it's a spiritual crime. We are there to nourish ourselves and others, at least in the journey of the soul.
This is the journey of the soul.
Journey of the soul. This is the body. The ego is a tool, is a vehicle for the soul to keep growing, and to dismiss this and to only value the ego is what creates suffering in ourselves and in others.
Yeah. Well, if you have any thoughts or experiences you'd like to share in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. And we enjoy sharing this topic with you, being able to share our experiences and contemplate. So thank you for tuning in.
And see you next time.